Hello, White Sox fans. It's Crystal O'Keefe with episode 23 of Visiting Dugout, brought to you by Southside Sox and a part of Fans First Sports Network. Today on the show, I have my wonderful friend Mikey. You might know him from Baseball Prospectus, It's Never Sunny in Seattle. He is a two-time SABR Award winner and known Paul Sewald appreciator. So, Mikey, welcome. Feel free to add to that if you wish.
You added plenty. That you added the Paul Sewald appreciating is very appreciated. So, yeah, I'm happy to be here.
Yes, thank you. So, let's get into what's going on with your Mariners. So, your American League West has been interesting to watch because there are four teams at either 500 or above. The Rangers obviously running away with this division right now, and the Mariners sitting fourth and still at, that 500 mark. So, what's going on in Seattle?
Yeah, I've for people who listen to my podcast, the people who are listening here likely don't, but I have historically been someone that hasn't thought the Rangers were particularly good. And I still think they're kind of playing over their heads. I think they're hitting better than their true talent. And I think most of the reason I haven't liked them is because I don't like the construction of their starting rotation, which has been like a top 5 rotation in their bullpen. So yeah, it's pretty tough. I think the Mariners can hack it with a lot of these teams, but the Rangers are, getting so far ahead of the pack that I'm starting to, kind of think like the Mariners might not be able to reach you. They have not been hitting. A lot of the players that hit last year, like Eugenio Suarez and Teoscar Hernandez, are, have been like scuffling and have had moments. I think Suarez started the year really hot and actually was had a really high batting average, which was strange. And then Hernandez starting to kind of turn it around, but we're 500.
Yeah, you are. It does seem like they've recently turned a corner. There was just, a 9-3 win against the Marlins. So, do you think if they do kind of turn it around and these guys start actually hitting again, do you think you can at least kind of catch up with the Rangers?
I kind of think, I just think that they need a bat really badly. And there have been some interviews with Jerry DiPoto in the past week or two. He's had a couple, and it seems like it's pretty clear that they're trying to add a bat. There's also that, like, Julio hasn't hit like himself, and he's starting to come around too. But while these things are happening, like Jared Kelenic really hasn't like done much for a couple months. He's really, really cooled off. And even though he actually has the highest WRC plus on the team, if you don't count Mike Ford, but when you look at like how he's done that, yeah, I think it'll take a couple acquisitions on the offensive side for them to do anything, and even then, we're going to see the Rangers add to their bullpen or add a starter. So I think it'll be pretty tough. I hope they're aggressively gunning for a wild card spot.
Yeah. So, and I know our lovely Big Dumper has been in a bit of a slump. So, and he just finally kind of broke that slump a little bit, but what pulls these guys out of these slumps, like Teoscar and Cal and everybody else?
The interesting thing that I've noticed with Julio and with Eugenio Suarez is, like, when you look at their WOBA versus like their ex-WOBA, just their, essentially like their batted ball results versus what they're expected to be.
Mm-hmm.
They've actually been a lot worse than you'd expect, which makes me think that they're just, positive regression candidates. And then there's also that, like, if you look at, Teoscar, when you look at Suarez. They're really like, and Julio, a lot of what they're missing is just their pull side power. And for some reason, they're just not hitting, home runs. So I think part of it is just, it's what happens earlier in the year is the ball is not flying as much, and they call Seattle home, which sucks for hitters. But I think we're gonna see some combination of just positive regression and also just just it's kind of the nature of it for power hitters, and also like this is kind of how they've been hitting anyway. So hopefully between the two, what we
Yeah.
see.
I definitely expected at least some regression from Julio because he was just intense last year. He was so great. So that's good to hear. To if you have to pick in, it's June right now. Do you have an MVP on your team right now that you would pick?
Oh, that's a good one. Oh, I feel like I'm gonna have to go with a pitcher.
That's fair.
It might have to be Luis Castillo. I mean, he has the lowest ERA. But he also just, he's been so good since joining the Mariners. I think I just saw a stat come up today or yesterday. I think for any Mariner in history with 10 or more starts, I think he has the lowest ERA. Which is like, in terms of results, it's really cool. And obviously the peripherals look really good. He doesn't allow a lot of home runs. He just strikes out, a lot of people, doesn't walk very many people. It's been cool to watch his fastball. I wanted to write an article about it, but his fastball, has ticked up this year in terms of like fastball ride, vertical movement, and he got his changeup kind of back. So just a lot of interesting stuff kind of going on underneath the hood. But I think Luis Castillo.
Yeah, that's a great one.
Yeah.
But on the other end, do you have someone that you would put on the trading block? Because we've got that trade deadline coming up.
Ooh. That's a good question. I think again it'll have to be a pitcher because I think they ought to deal from a strength. I think Marco Gonzalez might be back, so I don't think anyone's going to be super interested in him. I might say Bryce Miller. I don't know what his stock looks like when when like Dipoto or Hollander are talking to other teams, but I think he's going to be really good. I just really love Brian Wu, and think that they have guys coming up. So if you want to deal from a strength, if you want to trade someone who's good, who's really young, and as GM talk is like controllable, I think that's Bryce Miller. Like I think he could net you a really good bat. So someone like that.
Yeah. Well, Rick Hahn, if you're listening to this podcast, we need all the pitching help we can get.
Yeah.
So I mentioned obviously at the beginning your love for Paul Sewald. Ooh, I can't talk.
Sewald.
I know. So how did this kind of begin? And I mean, do you still have that? You got like a frame. You got an autographed jersey or something, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. He I think so. The kind of backstory is I tweeted something just kind of offhand about like, I didn't want like, I think I got a lot of people commenting and whatever. But I just was kind of, I really love kids. I love working with kids. That's most of what I've done since graduating from high school. And I think I was just hanging out with my brother's friends' kids. And I had been feeling, pretty rough around that point. And, I've historically dealt with suicidal ideations and had been up to that point. But that day I just felt like so, there's something about kids, and I'm sure this as a mother, but yeah, just so much creativity and imagination that kids still have before growing up and really losing it. I think because of the society we live in. So I just tweeted something offhand that was just like, you know, been feeling pretty bad lately, but I'm feeling really great right now because of kids. Kids rule. And everyone was just like, oh, you're, you know, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I mean, this is nice, but like, you know, I didn't want like attention. Um, and the next day I was sitting in the nook of my kitchen with my brother and my sister-in-law and just talking, and a notification popped up on my phone and I was like, holy shit. I was like, guys, Paul Sewald just tweeted at me. And like, I say this all the time, but like, I don't really like to like lionize or put people up on a pedestal because of their
Yeah.
job. But, you know, being a nerd and being someone who's loved baseball for literally as long as I can remember, it was just crazy. And he, you know, he sent me a tweet and then was like, you know, let's get you set up with something, and DM'd me, and they were on a road trip to Houston at the time, and he's like, you know what, like, are you around? Like, I was gonna mail you something, but if you're gonna be around, like, just come through. And I was like, bro, I live very close to the stadium. I can come through. So, you know, I was like, I don't know what you're gonna do, but I showed up, and it was. I think I'm glad it was just like a very normal conversation. Just like, you know, uh, it just felt like two dudes talking. And he gave me a jersey that just said like, you know, thanks for being the PSA club pres, and he signed it. He's very, very sweet. And, you know, we've had some correspondence back and forth since then, but I think less or so as time has passed. But man, just such a cool player to root for, and such a good dude.
Yeah, he's wonderful. I feel that way a lot with Jake Berger on the White Sox. He's, you know, he's a great person. He followed me on Twitter out of nowhere, and I was like, oh,
Wow.
again, like you don't
Yeah.
want to put these people on this pedestal, but at the same time, I'm like,
Yeah.
oh wait, no, this is pretty cool. And
Yeah.
like we talked before, and we talked about mental health, and he's
Mm,
just one of those like top tier guys that I'm
yeah.
lucky I can interact with on a semi-regular basis. He's a little busy right
Yeah.
now, but you know,
It turns out. Yeah.
yeah.
That's super cool.
Yeah. So this is where I ask some kind of fun questions from Twitter. This one was probably my favorite, but which Mariners and White Sox players would most likely be best friends?
Whoa. Okay. So this is like basically like pick a group or a couple individuals from both teams
Mhm.
to be like besties.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. I'm gonna have to think about this for a second. I feel like I feel like Eloy Jimenez fits really well on this team.
Mhm.
And, you know, I just think the nature of being Latina means it probably would get along really well. I think with Julio,
Mhm. Yeah, I can see that
Eloy,
one.
Eloy seems like a really silly guy. Yeah.
Yes, he's very silly. And he's young. He's pretty
Yeah.
young, so that's a
I
good
think
one.
with Julio. Yeah. I think Eloy and who I would really love to see that.
I would too. That would be fun. So thank you. Brittany was the one that asked that. You might
Oh, right on.
follow. Yes.
Yeah.
This one was best player in team history, not named Ken Griffey Jr. or Ichiro.
Whoa.
I know.
I think, you know, if we're not just like going off of war, I think Alex Rodriguez. Really, really bums me out that A-Rod left, because sometimes I think about the talent on those late, you know, mid late 90s Mariners team, and I'm like, what could have been? Like, that contract that A-Rod got was a lot at the time, and it's actually wild because it still like holds up, you know, into the 2010s and 2020s. I think A-Rod, you know, is one of the really like kind of better players of all time.
Yeah.
Could have been a shortstop, could have played with Ichiro and Griffey longer. So I'm gonna go with A-Rod. He was actually my like favorite Mariner, I think, even after he left. So
That's cute.
yeah.
That was such a fun time to watch baseball. I know you were on the younger side, but
Yeah.
lovely time for me, the old woman.
Yeah.
My dog agrees, apparently.
Yeah,
So
apparently.
this one, who would be the first Mariner to win an Olympic medal in what non-baseball event?
Ooh. So I think Julio. I think Julio is, it's just otherworldly athlete. Um I feel like some sort of sprint, right? Or like shot. Do they do shot put still?
I think
Is that a
so,
thing?
yeah. Maybe.
Pick an event, and I think Julio would
Yeah.
probably, especially if it's like running
Mm-hmm.
or throwing, I think could do pretty well. So we'll go with those two: the shortest sprint you have, uh, and shot put.
I like it. And then let's see, we've got, are the Mariners willing to move top prospects again to add to bench and rotation depth? And I know we kind of covered that a little bit already with the trade stuff.
Yeah, I think it depends on um I think it depends on the prospects. Like, do we like Bryce Miller is still considered a prospect? If so,
Mhm.
I think they would think about it. I often think about like the optics of making, certain moves, especially after the Kendall Graveman debacle where they traded him for Abraham Toro while the Astros were in town. And like, how that kind of thing would look, but also it's like obviously they're trying to get better in this scenario. So I think they would deal out of their young pitching and guys like him and Emerson Hancock and maybe Wu. Um, but I think Wu really fits the club here. So I think they would. Um, and maybe it looks a little unconventional or it looks more creative than you'd think because it's a weird front office we have here.
I feel
Very
that.
weird. Yeah.
This one was just from me. Were you in Nirvana's top 1% of listeners in your Spotify Wrapped last year?
I am a certified sicko, and I think I was like literally in the top 0.0001% or something like that.
I love
Um,
it.
yeah, I listened to a lot of Nirvana. I have since probably 2016, and I haven't really stopped. So
Yeah,
apparently they're timeless.
they are. They are timeless.
Yeah.
All right. We are going to take just a quick break to pay some bills, and we will be back to talk about the series. All right. Welcome back. I'm Crystal O'Keefe. Again, I've got Mikey here to talk about this upcoming Mariners White Sox series. So, right off the bat, the series starts with on fire Michael Kopech versus Brian Wu. He does have a large ERA right now, but I know he's still pretty new. Then we've got Lucas Giolito, who's also he's been great lately. And he goes against a pretty even Logan Gilbert. Their ERAs are really similar. They're both kind of the same pitcher. And then we have Lance Lynn for now, so long as he is not DFA'd in the next few days. He's been absolutely atrocious, and he goes up against your very young Bryce Miller. So, what should we expect with these matchups? I mean, like I said, two of them are really good matchups.
Yeah. I think the first in particular, it was what was it again? Kopech against
Kopech and Wu.
Kopech and Wu. I think is a really good one. I think the White Sox rotation is so fascinating because of how, obviously I don't follow the team as closely as you do, but it seems like guys like Kopech and Giolito go kind of in and out so frequently.
Mhm.
There will be stretches where Giolito's really good and stretches where he, really struggles.
Mhm.
Um, which I think has to do with, obviously he's like a pretty fastball changeup, oriented guy, and has lost his velo and his changeup shape. And I think because they're so dependent on each other, he kind of has more boom and busts. But that first matchup in particular is really interesting to me because I've historically really liked Michael Kopech, and I remember earlier this year saying to Malachi Hayes that I was like, I don't really know if where he succeeds is gonna be in Chicago, or at least um, with the White Sox, because the fastball's obviously good, but as we've seen with guys like Brian Wu in his first start and Bryce Miller, you need more than just the fastball. But aside from some home runs, really has turned it up as of late. So yeah, I think also interesting matchups because the Mariners are really good fastball hitters, and you have a group of um, to varying extents fastball pitchers. So um, I'm really interested to see. I don't know, the White Sox. Um, I don't know what the word is, but their proneness to breaking balls and stuff too. But the Mariners throw a lot of fastballs too. So in that way, I think these are really interesting matchups as well.
Yeah, that last one especially, that could be anybody's game. So do you have some keys for the Mariners to take this series? A lot of people say, wear down the starting pitching or, anything to, is there something they can do that can kind of guarantee a win?
I think a lot of what we see, and I kind of touched on this earlier, is like given the nature of being a a pretty power dominant, power heavy lineup. Um, there are just a lot of boom and busts, and they really struggle to move runners along because they're good at getting on base, or at least better than hitting for average or slugging, or but they yeah, if they get someone on first or even second, like you'll often see them really struggle to get guys home because they walk a lot and they hit a lot of home runs, but not so many singles or doubles. So I think the kind of really keys for them are like, do we see actual like home runs come in spurts, and do they um can they get on base in ways that are not just walking? So I think guys like Jose Caballero have been actually he's not a good example because he's in a little stretch where he's walked a lot and his average is like one something, but he's been good. But in general, guys like JP Crawford and Caballero have been kind of a shot in the arm because we do not hit singles.
Yeah, I understand that. The White Sox are just known for being the worst with runners in scoring position. They make me miserable almost every night.
Yeah.
So, do you have a threat on the Mariners, or do you have any fears going into this series? Like, who do you think could take us down, or who do you think could just totally blow it?
I thought you were asking me if I have like a personal threat. I was like,
Do you have a personal fear of the White Sox?
Wow. I mean, I think it's Julio. Like I think that uh more than anyone on this team has the ability to, just to help in so many different ways. Can run, can throw from the outfield, can hit for power. He's probably more likely than anyone to hit a double. Um, so, Julio, I think that's kind of an obvious answer. I think that in the, kind of the similar vein, I think Ty France is so critical to this ball club because he is a guy who doesn't have as much power. Like obviously he'll hit some home runs, but just as such, I think of like kind of Tim Anderson, like it's such insane barrel control and just such strong feel for hitting. And I know that TA hasn't really um, done much this year. Actually, I think I've heard that he's going to struggle with his glove even, but just, he just hits, he just rakes. And I think it's someone that, is just so key to this club. So I think, um, I feel like those two.
Yeah, that's where. Tim has been struggling. I mean, he
Yeah.
started to struggle late last season, and it's really carried over. And he's been making just some, kind of bonehead plays.
Hmm. It's and it's a contract year too. Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm having a coughing fit. So with this series, we have covered that. So this is kind of where I want to break it down and just hear your thoughts on this season.
Mm.
Underdogs, or who do you have going all the way, things like that.
That's a great question. Can we consider the Orioles underdogs? I mean,
Well, I think so, because
yeah.
I, this I said this last year. I can see them at the very least clinching a wild card. Um, Maybe they don't go further than that, but I still think they could be considered underdogs.
Yeah. I mean, just with some of the injuries that the Rays have had, um, already, like I think a lot of people probably add them behind the Yankees and behind the Blue Jays. Uh, they have performed better, and they're just such a like young, fun club, and like if it hadn't been for them and the Mariners vying for the same spot, I think for the past 2 years, then um, I would have really been rooting for them more. But yeah, just like such a fun group of guys. So I think they're a group that I think can actually do some damage going into the playoffs, and actually like yeah, with the Rays really like losing key guys, like I kind of wonder if they can even overtake them by the end. Um, so I think that's one team. My other underdog group is the Marlins. I think there's such a strangely constructed roster, but I wrote about them for the Baseball Prospectus Annual, and Craig gave them to me because they have such a fun pitching system. But I really, grew to really, love guys like Brian De La Cruz and a lot of their different hitters. And I think they're, I don't agree with a lot of Kim Ng's decisions at times, but um, she's created a really weird roster that is, ahead of the Phillies and not far behind the Braves in the division. So I think they can, maybe do some damage in the playoffs too. I don't know about World Series
It's still a little
teams though.
early, but yeah. Yeah, the Marlins,
Um,
that's a fun one. They just beat us in a series, but they're
yeah,
really fun to watch. Like,
yeah,
sorry.
yeah. But I think probably not the Mariners or White Sox. Maybe not. Yeah. So I think those are kind of those are my underdogs. And I think, just with how insane the Rays are, I feel like that would be my early pick for
Mhm.
a team that's going to be, pretty scary and might take it all this year.
Yeah, they could, unless they somehow regress, which, I mean, they have to regress at some point. It's just crazy if they don't. Well,
Yeah.
that's what I've got for you. Again, thank you a million times for coming on. Here's your chance to, again, plug your socials and where we can find you, because I know a lot of White Sox Twitter, we already follow you because you're wonderful, but just in case, just in case.
It is true. Yeah. I think I remember asking a couple years ago, I was like, if the Mariners suck this year, like maybe I'll just jump ship and be a White Sox fan. Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at _Kuya Mikey, and that's Kuya. Yeah, in terms of work, I'm pretty much just at Baseball Prospectus right now, writing about sometimes the Mariners, but usually not. Um, and have a podcast if you like the Mariners for some reason, called "It's Never Sunny in Seattle." So otherwise, I've kind of kept it more down low than in years past on the socials and online, which I think is probably for the best. But yeah, that's where you can find me.
Well, again, thank you so much. Obviously, best of luck to you. Your team is fun. I occasionally think about falling off the White Sox wagon, and the Mariners were one of those teams that I
Yeah.
considered. But I have to. I spend too much time on the White Sox now that I can't quit them. So,
Yeah.
all right. Well, thank you again, and have a wonderful evening.
Thanks.